It's the camera.
It's September 29th, and we're 35 days from the election. It was a slow news weekend, so we'll just kick back, relax, and wait until something big happens. Just kidding! When has that happened this year? Today is debate day on Vote for America, and we'll be talking with commentator Charlie Sykes, as well as a Lincoln voter who won't be voting for Trump again. And now, our host, Lincoln Project co-founder, Jennifer Horn.
Welcome to Vote for America. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This is the show where you want to come every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're going to be live at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:30 p.m. a.m. Pacific Time. This is where you want to be. We're going to be with you all the time, right up through Election Day. We're going to be here together, make sure we get through it. Make sure that you have all the data that you need to make informed decisions. Make sure you have the tools you need to make your voice heard on Election Day, and that you have all the information you need to help us as we try to persuade those undecided voters to make sure that they vote against Donald Trump and, more importantly, for Joe Biden. I'm really happy to have our co-host with me today, joining us. She's an activist, she's an independent voter, and she's the founder of the Marin Group, Lisa Senecal. Hey, Lisa, good to see you again.
Hi, Jennifer. Great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
I'm having you back. Like there's no show without you. No Lisa,
Actually,
no
we missed
show.
you
Isn't
on
that how?
Friday.
Well, I'm really happy to be back then. I'm the one who's happy to be back. So, Lisa, the first debate's coming up tonight, of course, but even before that, God forbid that we should go 5 minutes, much less a whole day, without something new and big and, earth-shattering happening in the world of politics and Donald Trump in this country. This is our first day on the air this week, but on Monday and then again yesterday, big news coming out of the New York Times regarding the president's tax returns. And it really is big news. It is a big deal. This is different than what we saw and heard in 2016. There's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, we have, I think people didn't really focus in 2016 because we didn't have this cache of very detailed information that the New York Times now has gotten its hands on. But, one of the main things that we've learned is that for the past 2 years, he's paid $750 a year in personal income tax, which is, it's mind-blowing and it's really disgusting.
Well, and it is, especially when you think about so many American families out there, this economic struggle that they're experiencing right now, those who are unemployed, those who, live within inches of poverty all the time, no matter what. We have this president who declares himself to be a billionaire, which I think we can all agree now he is not anything close to that. And not just the $750 a year that he paid the last 2 years on taxes. We now know that for the last 10 of the last 15 years, he paid no income taxes whatsoever. I think that's particularly interesting, not just in the context of the tax story itself, but the fact that we're going into this debate tonight. And so I was trying to have some conversations with folks on Twitter about this last night, and I put out a poll. We call it our tax poll, the Trump tax poll. My thought was, do you think that this story about the taxes are going to affect the way people vote? And it was really interesting. You can see overwhelmingly that the response there was yes, that overwhelmingly people think that this will impact the way that other people are voting. I think what's really going to move the needle as far as the election goes with this story is the kind of the personal, how personal this is to people. This isn't just Donald Trump saying, hey, I'm a billionaire and I've got, all billionaires have tax shelters, or, if you could get away without paying taxes, you would too. I mean, this is really personal to people now. And they, to your point, $750. How many folks out there would love the opportunity to get away with only paying $750 in their taxes?
Right. And for someone like Donald Trump, it really is getting away with something. And he's used the fact that he is in real estate to be able to, it seems a little shady, and we'll find out whether or not he's gotten himself into some
Right,
pretty significant legal trouble. But he's been able to write off huge sums of money, so he doesn't end up owing taxes, and yet he's living the lifestyle that he does.
right,
And it really means that we're subsidizing his life. We're paying the $70,000 worth of hairdressing that he's getting annually. He's not paying anything into the
somebody
government.
somebody is overcharging for their hairdressing skills there.
Yeah,
That's all
I don't know how I could spend that much even if I wanted to.
right.
And
But you make
if
it,
he's spending $70,000 to look like that, it's not money well
yeah.
spent.
I think you make a really good point, though, that what we're subsidizing. Let's remember what taxes go for. It pays our firefighters, pays our teachers, pays our first responders, pays our military,
Veterans, right?
so our veterans, and the care for our veterans. So I just think there's so much about this that's going to really start becoming part of the story. And like I said at the beginning, like, it's personal to people. Somebody tweeted at me yesterday, and I think we have that up there. If our magicians behind the scenes, this tweet from a nurse, when I was out talking about this on social media. She said nurses used to get $250 for uniforms and equipment, as a write-off, but Republicans got rid of that deductions in the first year of Trump. So this nurse, and I don't know how many other thousands like her, are now paying more for their uniforms than Donald Trump pays for in his taxes.
Yeah, and it's
That's the kind
especially
of personal hit.
yeah. Yeah, and they've done the same thing to teachers, that they used to be able to write
Right,
off some of, we know our teachers spend so much of their personal money to be able to get the additional things that they want to have in their classrooms to be able to teach our kids. And they removed this
right,
write-off that they had. And this is happening at a time when we're talking about nurses and teachers, who are some of the
right,
people working the hardest under the most difficult conditions because of the pandemic that the Trump administration
right,
and the president has completely mismanaged. So it adds
right.
insult to injury for these
Well,
folks.
I'm not going to let you get away with accusing him of mismanaging the pandemic, Lisa, because let's be about the truth. He hasn't mismanaged it.
Yeah.
He has intentionally and strategically made decisions that he thought would advance him politically, that have contributed to 200,000 Americans losing their lives. So,
Yep,
I
you are
refuse to buy
absolutely
into
right.
this mismanagement thing anymore. It was strategic.
Yep.
It was intentional. He was informed. He made decisions. So,
And he's
so
still
I
doing
think
it.
that's a big part of it. And he's still doing it. And Lisa, before we move on to talk about the debate, you were talking to me offline about the national security threat that has
Yeah.
been really revealed in these tech stories as well.
It's so troubling. And, the guy now owes somewhere between 300 and 420 million dollars, that all of those debts are going to come due within what would be his second term if he was reelected.
Right.
We don't know who he's borrowed that money from. We do know that banks in the US decades ago realized that he was a lousy risk and stopped lending the
Right.
the Trump organization money. So, if he's not getting it from the US, then there aren't a lot of other places to look than outside the US.
Sure.
Who does he have all this money that he's going to have to pay back to, who he's beholden to?
Right. I think it's an honest question to ask who the president of the United States is beholden to. I also think it's okay for us to speculate out loud here based on an awful lot of information that we've learned over the years that it could very well be Russia. And so, and
Including
we
his own
know,
son.
including his own son, as a matter of fact. That's right.
That.
That's right. Junior Junior's been out there confirming a lot of this over the past couple of
Yeah.
years. And, it just reminds me of that old saying, when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. We
Yeah.
have all this information about Donald Trump that keeps coming out. But, and I would have to say that my suggestion would be that the Trump camp is pretty worried right now as they get ready to go into this debate tonight. They know that their candidate has no self-control. They know where his head is. They know where his ego is. I have to think that debate night is worrisome for them, right? That they're all sitting around a conference table somewhere trying to figure this out.
Yeah, this cannot be a good time for them over the weekend. And we already heard that he's not really preparing for debates, and now they have to worry what this loose cannon is going to do with this new huge issue that we have. And you actually tweeted about the upcoming debate, so let's take a look at the tweet that you had put out.
I think it's interesting to see what other people are thinking about this. You and I kind of live in this world of politics where we talk about it all the time. And that's what I love about being able to use Twitter as part of the show. People can follow us, #Vote for America. And I just want to know what people thought was the most important thing that Joe Biden, would need to say or do at the debate tonight. Yeah. And it was pretty fascinating, frankly, to me. As we looked at some of these responses, there really was quite a divide. It was almost half and half of people who said he needs to just focus on the issues, ignore the taxes, talk about COVID, talk about healthcare, talk about the economy, and then another half who said, no, you've got to talk about the taxes, make it real to people, like you and I just talked about, Lisa, the nurse, and her $250 write-off that she's lost. And so, it was kind of, it's always interesting to see what other people are thinking about there. You're following this, what's going on in the world. What do you think Joe Biden needs to do tonight?
Yeah, one of the other things I saw in the reactions you received was that a lot of people think that Biden needs to be calling out the lies that Donald Trump says tonight. And I understand that impulse. I actually don't think that that's what Biden needs to do, only because both of these candidates have a really finite amount of time that they're going to be allowed to speak. So I think Biden has to, I think there are ways to diffuse it. I think, Ronald Reagan had a great way when he just did the, there you go again, when he debated Carter. And I think he's got to pivot quickly, because there's important stuff that voters need to be hearing from Joe Biden. And if he has to be fact-checking Donald Trump the whole time, and we know how much the guy lies, he is going to have no time to say anything else other than explaining all the things that Trump's lying about. So that's definitely something that I hope he doesn't do. I do hope right out of the gate he's aggressive. I think he's got to put Trump on his heels. He absolutely has to be on the offense, because we know, we've seen Trump debate before now, and we know that his tactic is to come out really aggressively. So I want to see Biden be the happy, positive warrior, but I definitely want to see him really showing a contrast between the type of person Donald Trump is and the good person that we know Joe Biden is, and what he would do to help put the country back together.
It would be great if it was just as easy as, here's this one thing you have to do. And just as long as you do this one thing, like, everything will be great. It's just so much more complex than that. I think you're right about a lot of what you said. He's got to, I think Joe Biden has to be firm and strong. He has to show that he has a plan. And we know that the single most concerning thing that the American people are facing is the coronavirus and the economic burden that has come with it. He has got to be able to go back to that, pivot back to that over and over again, and show that he has a plan. Only thing I disagree with you about a little bit is the idea of the lies. I don't think he should spend his night, correcting all those lies, but I think that he's got to find a way to point out that the president just told a lie. What we say in politics all the time is that a lie uncorrected becomes the truth. And we know that the moderators are not going to fact check the president,
right?
So if Biden just find a way to, every time the president does it, to just kind of say, well, no, that's another lie, and then go into his, into whatever he said.
Right, absolutely.
Well, that's also
I
untrue.
agree with you completely.
Just point it out over and over again. Yeah, and it'd be great at the end of the night for somebody to say that, to be able to say the president told 437 lies tonight.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine in the days to come, that analysis will be done, but
Yeah.
people need to leave the first hour of the debate because we don't know, that last 30 minutes, we're going to see people start dropping off and tuning out at that point. So by the end of the first hour, people have to be walking away with the impression that, this guy just will not tell us the truth. We desperately need the truth right now, and he just keeps lying to us when we need someone decent to be telling us, even if it's stuff we don't want to hear, even if it's difficult news. We can handle it. We're the American people. We've handled difficult stuff before. Just be honest with us, and we can deal with whatever the facts actually are.
Right. We can handle the truth. I think there's a movie that's built around that line.
That's right.
But we can handle the truth. And one more thing that I think is really important for Joe Biden is to do something that's totally natural for him. That's just part of who he is, and that's to let his empathy show. Because we are living in these times, I think, where people are feeling very discouraged, very burdened. I was just writing a column about this earlier today. I think people feel a sense, this kind of a heaviness, a loss, even if they don't know someone who's actually lost their lives to the coronavirus. And I think that for Joe Biden to be able to express empathy and optimism will be really powerful tonight, especially in that comparison next to Donald Trump, who is incapable, frankly, of either one of those. So that's the debate tonight. And coming up next, we're going to share a little bit with everybody, a little bit of what's new coming from the Lincoln Project. But first, I want to give you something you can do right now to stay in this fight and to help us in this fight. The Lincoln Project has a coalition of Republican and independent leaders who have come together to make sure we defeat Donald Trump. I think I just called him by one of his Twitter insult names. And they're called R's and I's for Biden. You can find them on Twitter. It's a great coalition. It's something I'm a part of. And you can go on Twitter right now and start to follow them at R's and I's for Biden. And then tonight during the debate, in addition to the Lincoln Project social media handles, the at R's and I's for Biden handle will be doing some fact checking and putting some important content out there throughout the debate as well. So if you can join them and become part of that conversation, it's just another thing you can do quick and easy to make sure you're part of the effort to make sure that Donald Trump is a one-term president. And so now we're going to take just a moment to share what's new at the Lincoln Project.
Leadership is not just about sitting in the pilot seat. It's about knowing what you're doing and taking responsibility for it. Being prepared, ready, and able to handle anything that might come your way. I've been flying over this country for 53 years. 53 years of flights you'd never heard about, and one that you've heard everything about.
They're calling it Miracle on the Hudson. Everyone on board, 155 people, make it out alive.
My whole life prepared me for that moment. From my father, a naval officer in World War II, I learned the awesome responsibility of command. From my service as an Air Force officer and a fighter pilot, I knew that serving a cause greater than oneself is the highest calling. And it's in that highest calling of leadership that Donald Trump has failed us so miserably. Now it's up to us to overcome his attacks on our very democracy. Knowing nearly 250,000 Americans won't have a voice, casualties of his lethal lies and incompetence. 11 years ago, I was called to my moment. Now we are all called to this moment. When you look down at our beautiful, boundless country, you don't see political divisions. It reminds us of who we are and what we can be. That we are in control of this nation's destiny. All we have to do is vote him out.
Vote Vets and the Lincoln Project are responsible for the content of this advertising.
This is going to be the great Trojan horse of all time. We have enough problems in this country. I believe in building safe zones I will even having other people pay for them. Now, the taxes are a very simple thing. First of all, I pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. Many of her friends took bigger deductions.
Welcome back to Vote for America. Thanks for staying with us. I'm really excited to have our next guest join us today. Actually, what I would say is he's a professional conversation guy. He spent a lot of years in talk radio, a lot more years than I did. But if you can do talk radio, that's what they say. That's your conversation expertise. So you know this gentleman, Charlie Sykes. Everybody knows him. He spent a lot of years helping to strengthen the Republican Party of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's an important swing state. It's always part of the conversation as we go into presidential elections. And Charlie has since become one of the founders of the Bulwark, which you can listen to, which you can find online. But life kind of changed for Charlie after decades of being a voice for conservatism in Wisconsin. Life for him kind of went a little cockeyed when he interviewed the candidate Donald Trump during 2016. And I just want to share a little bit of that with you right now.
Joining me on the line is the National Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump. And I know that you realize that here in Wisconsin, we value things like civility, decency, and actual conservative principles. So let's possibly make some news. I mean, last week you tweeted out a threat to spill the beans on the wife of Ted Cruz, Heidi Cruz. You followed it up by tweeting out a picture that insulted her looks. You know, wouldn't it be a good way to start off your Wisconsin campaign by saying that wives should be off limits and that you apologize for mocking her looks?
Well, by the way, I think it's true, actually, Charlie. But, you know, if you remember, Melania my wife was a very, very big, successful model.
Even though I've heard it many times, I still find that stunning. I'm very happy to welcome with us here today, Charlie Sykes. Hey, Charlie, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? It was all downhill from there.
Charlie, I'm going to ask you, Jeremy, I can't hear our guest. I'm going to have to just put it right out there. This is live stream and everything's happening live. I see him smiling. I assume he's doing well, but I can't hear a thing that he said. We're going to try to get to that. Stay with us, Charlie. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm doing all right.
There we go. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Charlie, you're looking all right too. It's good to have you here today. So my first question was going to be to ask you about what happened after that interview, but I really think it's worth it in this moment where we are looking at two candidates who are defined in great part by the difference of their decency, to revisit the president's answer to that question. When you asked him, are you willing to, put, some of the nastiness aside, engage in a civil conversation and apologize for attacking the appearance of someone else's wife? He came back and said, hey, my wife's a babe. My wife's is a model. And I think it's true. Heidi Cruz really is ugly. What does that say about this moment that we're living in right now?
Well, it's all been downhill since then, because not only did he not apologize, he's gotten worse and worse and worse. And the Republican Party has decided that it's okay with that. You talked about how, that interview marked a changing of my life. In some ways it did, but in some ways it didn't, because Donald Trump was who he's always been, and he continues to be that same guy. The extraordinary thing for me in Wisconsin was watching one by one as leaders of the Republican Party who understood who he was, had no illusions about Donald Trump's character, decided that, yeah, he's our guy. And I think that's the track that we're on today. That if you agree with somebody if they're a member of your tribe, you don't care about character, you don't care about human decency, you don't care about honesty, you don't care about any of those things that we used to think was important.
Yeah, Charlie, I couldn't agree with you more. Every time we have these conversations about what has changed since 2016, you just made a great point. Trump hasn't changed. He hasn't changed since 1978. He hasn't changed. Right. But has our party changed, or is there something about Trump that has brought out maybe a truth about our party that you and I have never really wanted to acknowledge? Because surely we are in a very different place right now than we have been at any other time in the history of the Republican Party.
You know, I ask myself that question almost every single day. So let me tell you a little story. I mean, last week here in Wisconsin, in Waukesha County, crucial Waukesha County, which is just to the west of where I am right now, the county party women's organization held a big dinner, $1,000 a head dinner. And their keynote speaker was Michelle Malkin, an alt-right white nationalist who has defended Holocaust deniers. And she led the crowd in a standing ovation for that 17-year-old boy who crossed state lines and shot 3 people, killing 2 of them in Kenosha. And I was talking about this with a Waukesha County Republican, and he raised the exact same question you just raised. Were they always like this, or has something changed?
Right.
Has Donald Trump given permission for people to be something that we had ignored all along, or has he fundamentally changed the party? And I think it's a little bit of both. But for me, that's kind of the shock. I mean, Donald Trump, reading the New York Times story about the taxes, my reaction was, yeah, this is the guy. It's been a fraud and a flim-flam all the way down, right? But to watch the Republican Party adapt itself to him has been extraordinary.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the tax story, because I feel like that's kind of makes that point better than almost anything, right? Because there's nothing in that tax story that you and I wouldn't have suspected or guessed at, but now suddenly we have these facts coming out and putting it into context to it and putting some shape around it for us. And yet still, I see on social media intelligent, educated, professional, former Republican colleagues of mine who are giving these long, ridiculous defenses of what we see in that story, what we see in the president's tax story. I would think that somewhere in there that there is a nugget of truth that is going to start moving at least a few of these Republicans back across the line of reason. Am I being too optimistic?
Well, based on past history, yes. Now those Republicans are probably gone. But, keep in mind, I know you've been talking about this, the 2 or 3 or 4% of Republicans who are perhaps in the middle, the ones out there, and I think those folks could actually make a difference. To look at all of this, because that story raised so many different issues, and it's not just that he didn't pay any taxes, because I think that's kind of baked in the cake, right? It's the failures and the fraud. But look. At this point in the Trump era, if you're still a Trump supporter after finding out that he paid 6 figures to pay off a porn star he was having sex with, a week after his wife had a baby, if you're still on board, then something like screwing over the IRS is not going to move the needle for you. So this is a referendum on Donald Trump, obviously, but it's also really fight for the heart and soul of the Republican Party to the extent that there is one anymore.
Yeah, Charlie, Jennifer and I were talking about Jennifer and I were talking about the debate before you came on, and trying to figure out, what is it that Biden really needs to do. And it seems like COVID-19
I'm
is
not able to hear her, so
Oh, okay. All right, Jennifer, I'm going to let you ask my question.
Ask me the question, Lisa. I'll do the best I can until Charlie gets back.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering is, what does he think Biden needs to do in the debate tonight to continue to move those folks who seem like they're starting to maybe be softening some because of COVID-19? How is it? Is it the health aspect of COVID-19? Is it the economy? Is it both of them? And what does he need to do to kind of tie it all together and make it resonate with these folks?
Well, first of all, let's just acknowledge that Donald Trump has done a massive favor to Joe Biden by lowering the expectations, by spending hundreds of millions of dollars convincing people that Joe Biden is so senile that he's going to come out and he's not going to be able to even stand behind the podium. So one of the things that Joe Biden has to do is he has to stand there and make himself the plausible alternative to the clown show of Donald Trump. And he can do that by just his persona. And I heard you mentioning before, talking about his empathy. If Donald Trump's shamelessness is his superpower, then Joe Biden's empathy is his superpower. And I think that needs to come through. And so I think that to a certain extent, just show you can stand toe to toe with Donald Trump, show that competing vision. Because this kind of reminds me of that moment in 1980 where the public had decided they were going to fire Jimmy Carter, but they weren't completely comfortable and sold on Ronald Reagan. And of course, the Democrats tried to make Ronald Reagan into this scary, horrible, person. And he said, well, there you go again, because that's not who I am. And I think that's what Joe Biden's got to do. So in a lot of ways, I think that his job is a lot easier than what Donald Trump has to do, because we talk about the soft voters, but what Donald Trump has to do is to change the dynamic of this race. He's losing this race. And the importance of that tax story is not necessarily that it will get Republicans to peel off. It just makes it so much harder for Donald Trump to get back those voters that he's already lost. And you had the story about the suckers and losers in the military, and now the people who pay their taxes are also suckers and losers. You have the death toll of the coronavirus. You have the state of the economy. And then you have this story about the taxes, which remind us that he's not really for the little guy. It really kind of exposes the fraudulence of that whole populist appeal. So if he's 9 points down in Pennsylvania, what does he have to do to narrow that gap? I think so. Joe Biden's in a pretty good position.
Yeah, and Charlie, you just made a great point that got me thinking about something. Normally when we go into debates are really about the undecided voters. The parties use, the guys who are all in use it to, keep their energy up and to cheer their guy on. But generally, the undecided voters are a very small number. And as we get closer and closer to election day, that number gets smaller and smaller. I think it was ABC just had a poll come out in the last day or two that showed the undecided voters growing by a couple of points, going from something like 9 or 10% to 14%. That's unusual. I think that's interesting. I can make some guesses about what's causing that. What do you think is causing that, and how's that going to play out?
Well, I just think voters are paying attention in a different way as we get closer to this. We're now 5 weeks away from this election, so there's going to be a real decision, and I think that there are going to be voters who are going to be asking themselves, all right, I may like some of the things that Donald Trump has done, but can I take 4 more years of this? I mean, can I really handle this kind of chaos for 4 more years? And I also think that even though we follow this so closely, a lot of people haven't seen Joe Biden up close. They may have seen their uncle's Facebook feed where they've taken a video and they've doctored it to make it look like he's stumbling and bumbling. So they want to see Joe Biden. They want to see him live in person. They want to have that. And I think the contrast is potentially going to be pretty dramatic.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so let's end this, Charlie, kind of where we started. We played that clip of the interview that has really become fairly famous at this point, the interview that you did with Donald Trump back in 2016. You were one of the only people out there who was really being honest and holding his feet to the fire on the clear character issues that have come to define, in my opinion, his presidency. It really, you got a lot of blowback, and it kind of changed the trajectory of what you were doing with your life at that point. Do you regret any of that? Is there anything there that you would have done differently?
Not a single thing. And I think we've seen all of this play out over the last 4 years, that Donald Trump is exactly who we thought he was, exactly who he told us he was. My only regret has been the lost friends, the lost allies. It has been a disillusioning experience. You mentioned that I played a role in the Republican Party, and to watch that party become a cult of personality has been, it's been kind of soul crushing in a lot of ways. So to the extent, that I have regrets, I regret those friends, and I regret the excommunication, but I don't regret basically saying, look, this is who we are, and Donald Trump does not represent the better angels of our nature.
Charlie, I'm so grateful for what you do and what you say and your firmness, standing on principle. You make it easier for other people to join us in this. And that's what this is all about, that on election day, we all turn out and vote for Joe Biden. It's Charlie Sykes, folks, from the Bulwark. Where can they find you online, Charlie? Is it thebulwark.com or thebulwarkonline.com?
Yeah, it's
Help me out.
you go to the bulwark.com. You're going to be able to find us. I think on Twitter, obviously at Sykes Charlie. And so
Excellent.
I'm guessing that most of the people have encountered us at one time or another. If not, we're glad to have
Well,
you.
and that's going to be our second thing that people can do right now to get in this fight and stay with us is go to Twitter and follow Charlie Sykes at Sykes Charlie. Charlie, thanks so much for being with us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.
So I got to tell you, Lisa, I'm really happy to have Charlie here. He is one of the people that, over the many years that I was involved both in radio and then in politics that I have really admired. And not because he and I agree on things, but because he really is so principled and very professional and so articulate on these issues that are important to us. I'm glad that he was here to talk to our audience today.
Yeah, he's a rarity in both elected Republican officials and the folks who are out there in the media who have we've seen what's become of a lot of those folks, and certainly the elected officials. I mean, it's just been so disheartening to see so many people who I really did believe were people of principle be willing to cash in on this and give away their integrity because they wanted to stay on the good side of Donald Trump. And man, I don't know what it is that a lot of people see is more valuable than their integrity and their dignity. But to me, it can't possibly be a congressional seat. It's not a spot in the Senate. But they've done it, and so to have someone like Charlie be willing to stand up and he put a lot at risk, and I just have a tremendous amount of respect for him.
Yeah, I really do too, and I have to say I really can relate to some of what he was talking about. With the people that you thought were friends turned out to be just acquaintances of political convenience. That is hurtful. Not with a lot, but there's a few for all of us who have kind of taken this path. People that we really thought we had genuine friendships with that turned out to be not so much. So, but like I said earlier, it's great having Charlie out there giving his voice to this. It makes it so much easier for all of those that we're talking to today. That let them know it's okay. You can be a Republican. It's do what's right. Stand up for that integrity. And in this conversation, in this one election, cross the line and vote for the right guy instead of for the Republican guy.
Yep, absolutely. So love having Charlie's voice on here. We're also trying to make sure that we get the voices of people who are watching this program. We really want this show to be a two-way conversation. Jennifer and I are, we can talk a lot for a long time, but we definitely want to hear what you have to say too. So we do have a telephone line up where you can leave us voicemail messages, and we've been getting a lot of them. It's been really fun to listen to them. And as I said on Friday, unlike my sons, we actually do listen to our voicemail messages. So please do leave those for us. We're old enough to still listen to voicemail. And we have one now that we wanted to go ahead and share with you.
Hi, I'm Sheila from New York, and I'm planning to vote early because of the problems with mail-in ballots. But I want to know, if we're in line, how long do they allow you to vote after you're standing in line and the polls close? Thank you very much.
That's a great question. That is a great question from her. You know what? I think there's two things in that, Lisa, that we have to address, right? Even though she asked one question, there's two pieces in there. The first one is that people have a lot of concern about mail-in ballots, and we've talked about it here on the show before. We'll be talking about it again. We just need to reassure people absentee ballots are completely secure. There is nothing wrong with voting absentee ballot. Get it in the mail as early as possible. Make sure it meets its final destination as early as you can. But they are secure, they are legitimate, and they have just about the lowest rate of fraud that you can imagine, something like 0.0025%. So it's okay to vote by absentee ballot. But to the real question there, she talked about lines, and she's worried about how long will the line be. People need to know, if you get online before the polls close, they must let you vote. Stay online. Don't walk away to ask a question. Don't go somewhere to grab a snack. Once you're online, as long as you are on that line at 7 or 8 o'clock, whatever time the polls close in your state, they have to let you vote.
Yep. Now, we know people are going to end up encountering folks, if they are standing in line, who are going to come and tell them that the polls have closed,
right,
and it doesn't matter if they're in
right,
line and they need to go home. And it's not true. Do not leave that line. You
Don't
stay
do it.
right there. Yep, there will be people who are going to come to your aid, who are specifically there to make sure that everybody gets to vote. So it doesn't matter who tells you, this is the law. You have a right to cast your ballot. Don't you go anywhere except inside that polling place, and you make sure that your vote gets cast and your voice is heard. The other thing really important is to make sure that when you're sending in absentee ballots, that you are being really careful to make sure you follow the instructions, mailing that back to the letter. There's something this year that we're referring to as naked ballots, which means some folks are just taking that ballot and they're putting it in the one outside envelope with the address to the polling place, and that's where, or the address to the state, and they're sending it back. You've got to make sure you put it inside the secrecy envelope. There are two envelopes there. Your ballot goes inside the secrecy envelope, the privacy envelope, and then that goes inside the main envelope that has the address for mailing it back in. So it's easy to make these little mistakes. Take the extra 2 minutes to make sure that you're doing it right, because we want to make sure that you're counted in this. It matters too much.
That's right. If you're only using one envelope, your ballot's naked and it's not going to count. Make sure you're using two envelopes.
Yep. We also have a second guest coming up, which is very exciting for us. We have what we are calling Lincoln voters, and these are folks who were previously Republican voters, and they have decided that they are going to make the switch and support Joe Biden this time. So we are going to be speaking with one of those folks when we come back, but first we're going to take a listen to a couple more Lincoln Project spots.
Yo trabajo directamente con la comunidad afectada por el coronavirus en este estado. La terrible respuesta del presidente Trump a esta pandemia nos ha afectado a todos. Yo he sido testigo de cómo las familias ni siquiera pueden despedirse de sus familiares y cómo son acosados por personas que no quieren utilizar mascarillas. Por favor, apoye a Joe Biden. Nuestra comunidad y nuestro país necesitan un verdadero líder con valores. El presidente Trump no es ese líder.
It's especially horrifying and disheartening to see the president of the United States not only not doing anything. Let's be very honest. People say how he hasn't acted. I think it's 59 days today. 59 days since the article came out. That article was confirmed. The information is confirmed by at least 5 other media outlets using separate sources to include those in the United Kingdom, and has not only not done anything, he's actually pushed back on the story, called it a hoax, and looked for the sources. And meanwhile, we find out a little leak from Pompeo, because that's how he tries to save his reputation, that he actually talked to his counterpart about it. So we've got think about that. The commander-in-chief of the United States military cares so little for our lives. He's more interested in calling something a hoax than actually doing anything about it.
Welcome back to, whoops, we We jumped back to Jennifer.
Lisa's with
Hey.
us. I know she's there.
Welcome back.
Okay.
I love our little technical difficulties. It lets you know just how very, very human we are. We're going to continue to show our humanity throughout this entire series between now and November 3rd, I am sure. Our next guest is a Lincoln voter, as I had mentioned. His name is James Fitch. I'm so excited to have him joining us today. He was a reluctant Trump voter already in 2016. And after enduring the last 4 years with the rest of us, he has decided that he is not able to cast a ballot again for Donald Trump. So welcome. Very, very pleased to have you here, James.
Great to be on with you. Enjoy speaking with you and supporting Joe Biden in any way possible to defeat Donald Trump.
That's really wonderful to hear. So tell us a little bit, what has your journey been like? Obviously, it wasn't easy to vote for Trump the first time. What has happened over the course of the 4 years that has made you feel like just there's no way you can do it again?
You know what? I was a reluctant Trump voter in 2016. It was more of a Hillary thing at the time of seeing another Clinton in the White House for another 4 to 8 years. So I've always voted Republican. The first election I was eligible to vote was 1984. So I was right in that Reagan Republican era, supported the Bushes, and then Romney and, et cetera. But with Donald Trump, I think the tipping point to me was really the impeachment investigation, because it was quite clear that he was bribing a foreign leader. And after that, it was kind of a point of no return. And not only was it a point of no return for Donald Trump, it was for the Republicans, the complicit Republicans who just sat by and let this happen. They wouldn't even allow a witness. And that was really the final tipping point for me. But quite literally and figuratively, the coronavirus was a nail in the coffin. If we were just a normal country who did their normal job, we have 4% of the world's population. We have over 20% of the deaths. If we would have just been average, we would have lost about 40 to 50,000 people. We've lost over 200,000 because of sheer utter incompetence of the federal government, led by somebody who just doesn't give a crap in Donald Trump. Doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about you.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things that we always hear are decision points for voters is, do these people I'm considering care about me? And I between what we've just seen in Donald Trump's taxes come out and COVID, as you were saying, this isn't a man who cares about us. So how do you begin to talk to other folks who might also be rethinking their 2016 decision? How do you get through to them and hopefully convince them to be willing to support the other guy this time?
Well, to me, this is the first election I've ever been a part of. And I think it's probably the first election since at least World War II that it's not about policy. You can disagree with somebody on how they feel taxes should be treated, how they feel other issues should be treated. It should be based on the individual, okay? You have distinct two differences of people. You have a horrible, reprehensible person who doesn't care about us. He only cares about himself, and he is not going to put this country first. I mean, this tax thing has, been crazy. I mean, the shit has hit the fan literally because of it. And he's not looking out for our interests. And Joe Biden is a good person. We may disagree with him on policy, and we can always revisit that issue 4 to 8 years from now. But this is a defining moment for the democracy and the future of the United States of America. It's easily the most important election I've ever been a part of. And I think it is for the American people. And, it's crazy if you think about it. If you'd have told me 8 years ago the most important election would be to vote for a Democrat, I thought that would have been insane. But it is. That's what has happened to us. It's more important for us to put a Democrat in the office than it any Republican at any point in my life.
Yeah, James, I think you're talking about something is very resonant with a lot of Republicans out there. I think you have become part of something that on election day is going to be like a movement across the country, a tidal wave. But I'm curious, as you look past election day, have you left the Republican Party? Do you see yourself voting Republican again in the future? Is this just Donald Trump, or has the party just disappointed you too deeply?
90% of the party has left me. There are a few people. I live in the state of Maryland, for example. Our governor here is a Republican and a great person, Larry Hogan. But that's not the normal. All the people in Congress who have supported Donald Trump, there is no way in the world I can ever support them. So at some point, can I go back to becoming a Republican? Probably. But there is no way conceivably any person who has stood up and backed him up when they know the information we and the American people did and have continued to support him, there is no way I can support any of these individuals. The Marco Rubios of the world, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, et cetera, all the way down the ballot.
Yeah, and I don't think for most people who are in the position that you're in, I don't think you've really left the Republican Party. I think the Republican Party left you. What has happened in the course of the last 4 years is, there might have been these elements that were there before, but now the dark stuff is the party. And, so there are so many folks like you, I think, who are having that struggle between voting based on party because that is what they truly believed in for such a long time, and being able to vote for the other side, even though on a policy basis you might have a lot of disagreements. But hopefully, we do all believe that we're Americans, and there are some things that are fundamentally American. So, what is it about Joe Biden that you think rights the ship and gets us closer to, not necessarily the policies that you want, but back to the country and the democracy that you want to see?
He represents all of America. He doesn't just represent the people that support him. He doesn't just represent his family. Even if you disagree with his policies, he truly is doing what he feels is in the best interests of the country. Okay, you can disagree with him. I don't want him to go with the Supreme Court pick. I disagree with him increasing taxes. It's okay to do that. Okay, he believes in his heart these are the right things to do. Donald Trump doesn't. Okay, with the tax thing coming out, he's making decisions, not what's best for us, but what's best for only himself. And what can happen in another 4 years of that is beyond scary. And disagree with Joe Biden. It doesn't matter. He cares about you. He cares about me. He cares about the American people. So I implore everybody out there who's open and is listening to this right now, give it a chance. Okay? Are you better off now? Is this country better off now than it was 3 3/4 years ago? Absolutely not. Give Joe a chance. And, I truly believe we'll be in a much better situation in 4 years. Number one, less people will die because he's going to deal with the coronavirus significantly better. More people will be employed. People who are really struggling, and they're really struggling with this, have a voice for them. They don't right now because Donald doesn't give a crap about us. Cares about himself. Joe does.
Well, James, thank you so much. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for all that you said. Yeah,
okay, thank you very much.
Giving your voice to this is so important, and you'll inspire other people. So we appreciate you taking the time to share your voice with us.
I hope so. And go, Joe. Crush it tonight in the debate and knock the socks off of Trump in the election. We cannot afford a close election, Joe. Just beat the crap out of him. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. Thank you.
I love that. Just go Joe. He sounds like he's cheering on his football team, you know? Like I
Yeah.
love that. Like that whole go Joe, beat the daylights out of them.
Right.
But I loved hearing him talk, Lisa, because for me as a Republican, you know, he not only is he speaking to what I think and what I believe, but what I'm hearing, you know, little by little by little, more Republicans out there starting to, you know, kind of have the courage to say it out loud. I used to talk about, I used to, you know, write and say that, you know, we know, you know, Donald Trump is a danger to this country, even if you aren't willing to say it out loud. But I think we have since learned so much that more and more people they're willing to say it out loud. This is the direction I think we're going to see this election go. The more people who have the courage that James just showed, the better chance we're going to have of making sure that Donald Trump does not get another 4 years to continue, you know, his destructive, you know, pillaging of the United States.
Yeah, I think it has a wonderful snowball effect. You know, it's like standing up to a bully. Nobody wants to be the first one, and they're afraid that they're the only one who disagrees with the bullying. And then that first person says something, and all of a sudden you realize there's so many people who feel the same way that you do, and you become an inspiration to those people to be able to follow your lead.
Right.
So I'm always so excited when I hear somebody with that courage, being willing to stand up and say what they believe is the right thing to do. I also have something else I want to tell you about that's kind of in that vein. I'm sure you have heard of the chef, although he refers to himself charmingly as a cook, Jose Andres, and the organization that he had started. I want to get the name right. He has started World Central Kitchen, and he started this to provide food during natural disasters to people when, you know, whether it was people working at these disasters or folks who actually live there. And he's taken on COVID-19 over these months, which has been really remarkable. His organization has been able to serve more than 3 million people. He's pulled in restaurants and you know, cooks and chefs from around the country to chip in on this effort. And one of the really wonderful things that I heard him say in an interview yesterday that you know, James really reminded me of is that when he is helping these people, he doesn't see Republicans and Democrats and independents. They're feeding people. They're Americans coming together to be able to feed hungry Americans, and party doesn't matter. And I think that's the way we need to be looking at this election. There's a greater good, and we need to be seeing one another as Americans and not divided by party. So I wanted to make sure I called that organization out. You can learn more about them at wck.org.
I love that too, Lisa. I think that's terrific. And what I really love about it is that he has a talent, a skill, and he's using, you know, that thing that makes him special and unique to help other people. Because you don't have to be a world famous chef to make a difference in the lives of others. We all have something that we can do, something that we bring to the table, and you don't have to be able to help 3 million people. Your neighbor, somebody down the street, somebody that you know online. We all have something we can bring to the table to lift up other people in our, you know, in our circle, in our community. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And as always, Lisa, thank you so much for being with us today. Can't do it without you. I'm really glad that you were here with us. And I want to thank all of you for being with us today as well. It's been another fun day at Vote for America. You can continue to be part of the conversation on social media by using that hashtag Vote for America. We want you to be part of it. We want to hear from you, leaving us a voicemail, all different ways that you can get in touch with us so that we know what your concerns are, what your fears are as we are approaching Election Day this year. I also want to remind you that there is a debate tonight. It's important to be engaged. I hope you're going to watch it. I hope you'll follow at R's and I's for Biden and at Project Lincoln on Twitter tonight during the debate, where we will be fact checking the president and sharing lots of good and important information for you there. And of course, we'll be back here every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday until November 3rd. We're live at 1:30 Eastern Time, at 10:30 Pacific Time. But more importantly, thank you so much for everything that you are doing when you bring your passion and your belief in our country. When you stand up and are able to express, that optimism for the future of our country, that we have a candidate in Joe Biden who will speak to the best in us and bring us together and bring forth in our country the best of who we know we can be. That's how we win. That's how America wins. Thank you so much for being part of this. I look forward to seeing you back here soon.